Good evening, everyone, and welcome. I'd like to call this public hearing and regular board meeting of the San Felipe Del Rio CISD Board of Trustees to order, today being December 16th, 2024. Mr. Secretary, would you call roll for us?
Yes, sir. Mrs. Luna Chavez.
Present.
Mr. Almaraz.
Present.
Mr. Overfelt.
Here.
Mr. Mesa.
Here.
Mrs. Webb.
Present.
Ms. Haynes.
Here.
Sir, you have a quorum.
Thank you so much. Let the record show that we do have a quorum of board members and that this meeting has been duly called in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551. This time we will have opening ceremonies, first with a moment of silence for personal reflection, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. First item we have on our agenda today is public hearing, the overview of the School First Financial Integrity Rating System of Texas. Amy Childress.
Good evening, President Mesa, Dr. Rios, and members of the board. This evening, I will be presenting our School First rating for this is the 2024 rating for the fiscal year ending June 30th of 2023. This is the 22nd year of Schools First, which is the financial integrity rating system of Texas for Texas school districts. This public hearing is to announce that the district received a rating of A Superior with a score of 98. This rating is the state's highest, demonstrating the quality of our district financial management and reporting system. The state school financial accountability rating system, known as the School Financial Integrity Rating System of Texas, or FIRST, ensures that Texas public schools are held accountable for the quality of their financial management practices and that they improve those practices. The system is designed to encourage Texas public schools to better manage their financial resources to provide the maximum allocation possible for direct instructional purposes. So we will begin. There are 21 indicators that are scored. And I will start. The first one was the complete annual financial report and data submitted to TEA within 30 days of the November 27th or January 28th deadline, depending on the school district's fiscal year-end date of June 30th. That was a yes. Was there an unmodified opinion in the AFR on the financial statements as a whole? That result was a yes. Our auditors submitted an unmodified opinion audit. Was the school district in compliance with the payment terms of all debt agreements at fiscal year end? That was also a yes. Did the school district make timely payments to the Teachers Retirement System, Texas Workforce Commission, and Internal Revenue Service, and other governmental agencies? That was a yes. Was the total net position in the governmental activities column, I thought I had to flip. In the statement of net position, greater than 0, and that indicator was also scored as a yes. Item number 6 Was the average change in fund balances over 3 years less than a 25% decrease? Or did the current year's assigned and unassigned fund balances exceed 75 days of operational expenditures? That answer was a yes. Our fund balance actually increased 7.36% over the 3 years. Number 7, was the number of days of cash on hand and current investments in the general fund for the school district sufficient to cover operating expenditures? We received 10 points for that, which is the highest. Our district had 169 days of cash on hand for the 22-23 fiscal year. Number 8, was the measure of current assets to current liabilities ratio for the school district sufficient to cover short-term debt? We also received the maximum points for that, 10 points. Our ratio was above the 3. It was actually a 3.1537. Number 9, did the school district's general fund revenues equal or exceed expenditures? If not, was the school district's number of days of cash on hand greater than or equal to 60 days? We received the maximum 10 points, that our revenues were equal to or exceeded expenditures. Number 10, did the school district average less than a 10% variance when comparing budgeted revenues to actual revenues for the last fiscal years? That indicator is not being scored for this fiscal year, so we did receive the automatic maximum 10 points. Number 11, was the ratio of long-term liabilities to total assets for the school district sufficient to support long-term solvency? Again, our ratio was higher than the 10 points was a 0.60. We were at a 0.279, so we received our 10 points. Number 12, what is the correlation between future debt requirements and the district's assessed property value? Again, we received the maximum of 10 points. Our ratio was 1.6941. Number 13, was the school district's administrative cost ratio equal to or less than the threshold ratio? Out of 10 points, we received 8 points for this indicator. This indicator, they take the administrative cost ratio is the total administrative cost divided by the total instructional costs. And then depending on our ADA, our ratio, they would like for it to be below a 0.10 in order to receive all 10 points. For the 22-23 year, our ratio was a 0.1196. However, I have calculated for the 23-24 fiscal year, which we just completed, I'm estimating that our ratio should come down to a 0.108. And then for the following year, the current 24-25 fiscal year, with the budget cuts that we did in our administrative positions and other areas, I'm estimating that we should be back below the 0.10 level, so we should regain the full 10 points. Item 14, did the school district not have a 15% decline in the student to staff ratio over 3 years? We did not, so we received the full 10 points. Number 15, was the school district's ADA within the allotted range of the district's biannual pupil projections that were submitted to TEA? This indicator is not being scored again this year. The maximum points you can receive are 5 points, so we did receive those points. However, we also were within the ratio. Number 16, did the comparison of Public Education Information Management System, or PEIMS data, to like information in the school district's AFR result in a total variance of less than 3% of all expenditures by function? The answer was yes, we were below the 3%. Number 17, Did the external independent auditor report that the AFR was that the AFR was free of any instances of material weaknesses in internal controls over financial reporting and compliance for local, state, or federal funds? The answer for that was a yes. Number 18, did the external independent auditor indicate the AFR was free of any instances of material noncompliance for grants, contracts, and laws related to local, state, or federal funds? For that, we received all 10 points. There were no instances of material noncompliance reported. Number 19, did the school district post the required financial information on its website in accordance with government code, local government code, Texas Education Code, Texas Administrative Code, and other statuses, laws, and rules that were in effect at the school district's fiscal year end? Again, we received the maximum 5 points for that. Number 20, did the school district's administration and school board members discuss any changes and/or impact to local, state, and federal funding at a board meeting within 120 days before the district adopted its budget? Again, the answer to that was a yes. And indicator 21 is a new indicator for this year. Did the school district receive an adjusted repayment schedule for more than one fiscal year for an overallocation of foundation school program funds because of a financial hardship? And again, that was a yes, so we received for that. So again, our total points out of 100 points was a 98, which represents a superior fund rating. Again, under our financial transparency area on our website, there are some other disclosures that are to be reported, and we do have those reported. There's our links to those on our website. And that is all that I have.
I'll ask the board if they have any questions. Just want to say that credit goes to the department. And of course, we had the most discussion ever before we adopted the budget this year. And I wanted to ask just one question, which is question on item 10. Is that because of the deficit budget? And if so, I'm so glad that it wasn't taken into account.
So that one has not been scored for the last couple of years, and actually it was because of the COVID relief that was received. So the way that they calculate it was still being impacted by that. So that it should be, it's just not being scored by TA this year.
It's a great thing because, again, the other one that I noticed was ADA, which is wonderful because we have been improving quite a bit, but it's been a steady process, but we're in the 90s now, and I'm so glad of that. And again, thank you so much for all the work that is done. I know that the auditor had good things. Again, we just had our audit report, and it shows that San Felipe Del Rio ISD is doing a great job with the finances. Anybody else want to comment in regard to that? Now we're going to open it up to the public. If anyone has a comment, this is a public hearing. Hearing none, I want to thank you so much, and again, great job.
Thank you very much.
We'll adjourn the public hearing and go into our regular meeting. First item we have is item 8, reports. First one being tax collection report. Amy Childress.
All right, good evening once again. President Mesa, Dr. Rios, members of the board. We have with us Mrs. Sonia Gonzalez from Lineberger that will actually be presenting that report. Thank you.
Let me open this up. Good evening, board. I know we left hard copies in front of your all's microphones there. I have 4 slides. So the first one, this is a tax collection report directly from the tax office. covering receivables up to November 30th. I just wanted to point this out because I believe in a previous meeting, it was stated that there were a little under 10 million in uncollected delinquent taxes. So this is coming straight from the tax office. As far as San Felipe ISD goes, it's $6,471,724 in delinquent taxes, okay? Of that amount, and I know this is going to be discussed later on in executive session, there is pending litigation on these wind farm accounts totaling $2,384,557. Keep in mind, this is base tax only, okay? And then I just wanted to show you all what's currently the amount currently under litigation. That's almost 1.6 million, and that's delinquent tax lawsuits that we currently have in the district courts here in Valverde County, which leaves a balance of close to 2.5 million of cases, delinquent tax cases that are not currently in litigation. Okay, so I just wanted to point out this November, we filed 30 additional suits. We're going to be filing an additional 30 in January, as well as another sheriff's sale in February. But I just wanted y'all to have a clear picture of where we stand as far as delinquent tax receivables, okay? And I'm going to jump to the next slide. Now, this is a yearly breakdown analysis. Again, we're only working with base tax amounts here. Penalties and interest are not included in this chart. So if we look at 2014, what was turned over for us to collect was $954,417. Within that 1 year, of that amount, we collected $449,926, leaving $504 uncollected. Okay, that's just 1 year in collecting that particular year. Now, keep in mind, our delinquent taxes are turned over to us for collection on July 1st. Okay, so for example, in 2025, we won't begin collecting the 2024 taxes until July 1st. And really, it's August because we clean that roll when it's turned over to us. So we're always working back those years. And that's just a snapshot of the year. Now, the following sheet, that shows a collection as of November 30th, 2024. So let's start at the top. If you look at 2012, a little over $1 million was turned over to us for collection. As of November 30th, 2024, we've collected $946,878 of that $1 million. Now, keep in mind, we're collecting multiple delinquent years. So these numbers are always going to fluctuate, and that's why you see percentages fluctuate in different reports. So if I have an account that's 5 years delinquent, and those payments are posted to these years, these numbers are going to continuously go up. Okay, but what we did there, we included the wind farm account to show you if that money had, again, base only, keep in mind, this does not include penalty and interest. We put what the receivable would be without the wind farm balances that are pending. Okay, so we go down to 2013. I just want y'all to understand you're looking at $1,057,000 turned over to us for collection. We collected $950,000 of that. So you come down to the wind farm years. I'm looking at 2019. It's $1,755,399 turned over to us for collections. Of that amount, $1,486,000 was collected. If we remove the $605,000 on that one delinquent tax account only, that leaves us with a receivable of $268,938. Let me go to the final one, and this is the important one because these are the numbers that are turned into TEA. So this shows you the breakdown of collections against the adjusted levy when that delinquent tax roll is turned over to us July 1st. So that receivable balance turnover, that's the same number that was in the other slides, okay? At the end of the day, that's a dollar amount, that doesn't change, that was turned over to us. Now, the collection percentage at turnover 2 shows when it was turned over to us, that was the collection rate, which tells me normally within any jurisdiction, you have about 1 to 3% of the people that do not pay their taxes timely. This shows a little bit of a higher number, just by looking at that before it was turned over to us, what the collection rate was there. Now, after 1 year of collections, you see the percentages going down there per year, and so on, 2 years, 3 years, and it shows the balance for each year as of November 30th, 2024. And those are the percentages ultimately in the column that TA looks at. So, and that's where we're at. I know it's a lot of numbers, but if the board has any questions, I'm happy to address them at this time.
Question from board members? I'm just so glad that it's over 90%. I mean, that's awesome, considering, you know, all the issues with COVID and people being off of work and so forth.
Yes, and remember during that COVID year, everything stopped. Basically, lawsuits, we couldn't service anyone, we weren't having dockets, everything slowed down. And it's taken a while to rev back up, but as I was discussing with some of the board members before the meeting, we're having dockets continuously. I have one tomorrow, so we're cleaning up all those dockets here. And at the same time, working on the properties that have been foreclosed on. It's like we tell people, we're not here to take away your homes and your properties. We want to try and work with you. So we encourage taxpayers to enter into payment arrangement plans with the tax office and just stay in communication with us. Now, ultimately, if that has to happen, that's what happens. We have a sale coming up in February, and we're still working with these struck-off properties that I'm going to discuss later on in this meeting. But the goal is to work with these folks.
But it's great to see the 90+% collection. Anyone else? No, nobody has a question. Sonia, I have one because I know I've noticed a property that was taken off, actually was put up for auction, but I'm sure that there's a problem with asbestos abatement and expensive, you know, to do that. And that's a property on Ogden Street that, I don't know how many years ago, it's right under the overpass, right behind a restaurant that is located there. But it might have been 3 years ago, but, you know, I know anyone that's interested, you know, they back off because of the asbestos. And so what happens to some of those properties? I mean, they just go on and on forever?
Right now, we're looking on those, and I don't know if that one has gone to sale. You said it went to sale and then was removed, it was pulled?
Well, I mean,
I would need to look at it specifically, see if it was struck off or not, but we've been working with the city, and I don't know if you recall, back in 2023, they approved about, I want to say, I have the number here, 26 properties that we proposed to reduce the minimum bid, but also for the city to waive code compliance liens. Now, as far as asbestos and demo costs, that's something we'll have to discuss just because those are very, very expensive.
Yes, I remember the city approving everything.
Yes.
Was.
But that one, I'll be happy to look into and get you more information
Well,
to see where
it's
we
just,
stand
I
on
mean,
that.
just as an example, I'm saying that one because, you know, I was with the hospital board and it cost us like $30,000 for just one house, and we were trying to build a helipad, which we did, but it was, you know, an enormous amount. And so I just wonder how, you know, if and when the property will ever, you know, be
And
cleared off.
it may have to come to that point where those fees really need to be examined to see if it can be waived, because at the end of the day, the property is off the roll. It's not generating any revenue. It's
Right.
probably creating a nuisance of some sort to get that back on the roll, to
Yeah,
work with the
that- and-
entities. 'Cause
and that's
nobody
what-
wants them just sitting struck off the roll.
That's exactly what it does because it's right next to the railroad tracks. And, it's a nuisance because eventually it'll burn, for something because, people might go in and just set it afire or just to keep warm, but the doors are unsecured. I just wondered. Yes, Dr. Rios?
Thanks for being here. If we look at the last page that, from the TA report,
Yes, sir.
it's a two-part question.
Okay.
So the first part is it safe to say that for the years between 2023 and 2019, that a lot of these people are on payment plans, so just as we've reached 99% in all previous years, since then, those will probably come into 99% as the payment plans carry on over the next 5 years.
Correct.
So 99% of the people eventually do catch up on their taxes.
Yes.
And we collect from everybody. You have
And
that
again,
1% you close on.
yes, Yes, and again, this is base tax. You factor in your PNI and the penalty and interest in that
That was the
percentage.
second part.
Yes,
So the
shoot,
percentage of that collection on the last column on the right, that is only on the principal amount. They're not considering any interest, any
No.
penalties or interest that they're paying.
Correct.
Oh, good. So 99% after 5 years. So, got it.
No further questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, this time Amy Childress is not up. Next report that we have is the middle school redesign update, Sandra Hernandez.
Good evening, President Mesa, Dr. Rios, and members of the board. This evening, as in previous board meetings, the purpose of this presentation is to update the board on, and the community on the project on the middle school redesign and our updates to these projects, to this particular project. So in looking at the milestones, just to remind the board, we are looking at leadership, we're looking at rezoning, facility needs, CTE courses, technology, and then we also have athletics, special education, and staffing. So as you can see, the vast majority of these categories were well underway and in progress for each of these components. So under leadership, in our meetings, once the principals were all hired, and there was a discussion between the principals to look at what the leadership model for middle schools could be. And in discussion with the committee members, they came up with this particular leadership model. And this will be the model that will be used at all three middle school campuses, the Del Rio Middle School, San Felipe, and Garfield. And you'll see that we'll have a principal, followed by 2 assistant principals, a 3rd assistant principal / dean of instruction, and then 3 counselors, 1 for each of the grade levels. So this is the decision, the recommendation that was made after discussion so that they could really target and work with our students. If you remember, we have a 6th through 8th campus for each of the middle schools, and their discussion felt like this would provide the best support for the middle schools and each of the grade levels at each of these middle schools. The next milestone is on rezoning. The last time that we provided a presentation and an update, we were about to have a meeting with our Garfield families and discussing the rezoning option. And this option was presented to the parents and led by Dr. Rios. Once the families did meet, we want you to know that we did reach out to all the families that would be impacted by that rezoning. That meeting was held. Discussions were provided, feedback was given, and this feedback was provided and shared at the second meeting with the Citizens Committee. So during this committee meeting, our Citizens Committee members discussed what their concerns were, what the parents' concerns were, but they also participated in an activity to list the pros and cons for both options. The options of retaining the group of students at Garfield and rezoning them or moving them over to blended, or rezoning all of the students to the elementary campuses. So based on that discussion, I want you to look at this particular frame. Out of that discussion, the Citizens Committee members, they reviewed, they discussed those planned options very carefully and thoughtfully. And it was a very productive meeting. From that discussion, 19 out of the 21 members that participated in the Citizens Committee meeting recommended Plan A for rezoning and distributing all of the Garfield students to other district elementary schools. And they said these are the primary benefits for that reason. These are the reasons that really surfaced in that discussion. They said all students would have access to resources. That means their amenities in the schools, the gym, the cafeteria, the library, after-school programs, and they would have that immediately. They wouldn't have to wait. All students would be distributed to elementary schools, and they would immediately have those resources. Secondly, all of the students would be equally proportioned and redistributed demographically so that they wouldn't be disproportionate in subgroups. For example, your bilingual students, if you look at the zone, the students would be disproportionately rezoned, and you'd have a larger percentage of students attending Garfield that would remain and going into blended, whereas if you had all the students redistributed to all the elementary schools, they would be balanced. And so you would have a proportioned demographics under Plan A. Under Plan B, it would be disproportionate. The third thing that rose up to that conversation was that Blended Academy wouldn't have to relocate. So that campus would remain where they're at and continue as a blended academy. And then the last thing, the conversation that was brought up by committee members, which was really important. It was something that, we know this, but there wasn't any added cost to the district. So by redistributing our students under Plan A, all students will be proportionately just redistributed to all campuses, but it would be no cost to the district. So that means we wouldn't have to add any more costs to facility buildings or any other, just any additional costs to the district to be able to rezone. So these are the four reasons and benefits that rose up to the top in that discussion. And I want to go back, and then out of the 21 persons, committee members that were there, 19 out of 2 favored Plan A. Going on to facility needs and this project milestone, as you know, we have our committee, the Citizens Committee, have divided up into groups, and these groups have the opportunity to do site visits at the schools, San Felipe, at Del Rio Middle School, and at Garfield. So they were each had the opportunity to go and take a look. So as a district, and we look at our operations and administration, and we look at technology director, and as we're walking through, we may have a general idea of some of those needs, but our committee members, as they're walking through, they're also looking at what other needs do we need to consider at each of these middle schools. So we conducted those site visits. They were completed last week. And we will follow up with our Citizens Committee in January to look at the recommendations that they have for each of their campuses. And I'll point out one. This is just one, but that certainly there will be more that will be discussed in the future in January. But one of those that, as an example, that was pointed out was the size of the library at San Felipe Memorial Middle School. And so that it is a standalone library, and it's different in size in comparison to the one at Del Rio Middle School, for example, and the number of books and the number of space. And so those are the things that were pointed out by that committee. And we'll continue in bringing that information and the list of recommendations at our next meeting in January. The other need that we followed up with was the need to begin to recruit for our students attending New Tech Middle School at San Felipe Memorial Middle School. And if you remember way back when we started looking at the zones, we started to look at the numbers and looking at the enrollment population for each one. We're beginning the recruiting process for New Tech at San Felipe. We began to organize, working with the principal, Mrs. Pond, to identify a couple of dates so that we can have parent informational meetings. And those are the dates. We will have a couple of them in January. We have since then, this last week, we have shared recruitment letters to our parents via email. We have shared a letter inviting them to the informational meeting that will be here in January. And we've also shared them on our Facebook page as well. The next milestone that we talked about in working towards the middle school redesign is to talk about CTE courses. From the very beginning, we clearly shared that each of the middle schools will have the same services. So looking at CTE courses, looking at the courses that will be provided for each for their students, we wanted to make sure that each of the campuses had the same number of courses, but also the same level of services by our staff. So in looking at that, we met with a CTE director and coordinator, and we looked at the proposed courses for middle schools, beginning with 6th grade, 7th grade, and 8th grade. And in doing so, we looked at staff, and we looked at the needs for staff and their certification, which prompted us to take a look at District of Innovation. And in doing that, we came to find the need to update our District of Innovation plan. So we did write this as an activity so that we could complete our District of Innovation process to include middle engineering in our middle school grades and our middle school campuses. And we looked at the qualifications for the instructors. So that prompted us, looking at that discussion, prompted us to begin that process of District of Innovation and looking at the plan itself. We conducted a meeting with our District of Innovation advisory group. And in this group, we just looked at the amendment, we looked at the plan exemption for educator certification for CTE programs. In that review, we discovered that it was written back in 2018. And since then, we wanted to bring forward an amendment that would best describe where we are today. And where we are is that our CTE program here in our school district has grown exponentially. It has grown by leaps and bounds. And so we wanted to share that. We wanted to say that the number of course offerings has expanded since we first started our District of Innovation program back in 2018. But we also wanted to say that first and foremost, our school district looks and seeks to hire highly qualified, certified individuals. But when there is not that availability, the exemption from this particular code would allow the school district the flexibility to consider workforce professionals to teach CTE courses. And we now looked at the areas in which there are hard to fill career clusters. So the language had to be updated. It needed to be aligned with our current TEA clusters, the way that it's aligned, and you'll see them here. We wanted to include architecture and construction, arts, audiovisual, technology, and communication, health science, which we already had, hospitality and tourism, human services, information technology, business, marketing, and finance, law and public services, manufacturing, science, technology, engineering, and math, which is our STEM, transportation, distribution, and logistics. Now, in the language that we had previously, it didn't look like this, but now it's more specific and more targeted to the specific career cluster. In technology, what we've done is we've conducted the initial meeting with our technology director. We've established the needs for technology for middle schools. Our technology director has coordinated with our CTE director to make sure, do we have project lead the way in order for us to have our engineering courses? Do we have the technology up and available and ready for each of the three campuses? And then we wanted to conduct walkthroughs, which he's already done, to identify needs for the interior and exterior security cameras, any added security cameras aside from what we already have. And then we want to plan and budget for vape detectors at Garfield, because remember, Garfield will now be a middle school campus, so we wanted to be able to do that. So now this leads to our next steps. As you can see, we've gained a lot of momentum, a lot of progress, and there are some next steps that need to be taken into consideration. So we want to notify our Garfield parents of that rezoning decision. We want to be able to finalize the Garfield rezoning and then notify parents of their assigned campus. We want to be able to complete the New Tech Academy recruitment process by the end of January, early February of next year, in time so that we can begin preparing for that final rezoning to balance our middle schools. And we also want to finalize that middle school rezoning so that we can notify those parents of their assigned campus and then begin our preparing for staffing plans for both elementary and middle schools. And at this time, I can answer any questions that you may have.
Dr.
Rios
Rios?
may have some.
Thank you, Mr. Mesa. Thank you, Sandra, for the presentation. I wanted to clarify for the Board of Trustees the recommendation for the leadership. The teachers got together and they all really wanted to have one assistant principal per grade level. They almost didn't want the dean of instruction because they want that administrator that they can work directly with on the student needs. So this is the recommendation. However, we are clear, at least at the cabinet level, we are clear that before we go adding 3 administrators, we have to recognize the budget implications. And before we do that, we are committed to returning the fine arts teachers that were cut due to the budget cut. So I don't want anybody to think, hey, they're adding more administration and we have teachers to still return. So by all means, that is the priority before we go adding administration. And then the other part I wanted to mention on the rezoning of Garfield is that it was a difficult recommendation, but given everything that was considered, there were all considerations. We learned some things as we were going forward because the board recalls we first started talking about rezoning to blended. And then we got the data file of the students that would be included in that rezoning to a smaller Garfield at blended. And we learned about the just huge number of bilingual students and eco-dis students and the difficulty that it would cause to keep that school both staffed and providing what the students need. So we have some options to consider to make the rezoning work better, but that at this point, that is, if we are to do the middle school redesign, which we're moving forward with, that is the only option available.
I'll turn it over to board members for questions. Ms. Webb?
I'm going to address this to Dr. Rios because he already mentioned part of it. In the leadership, you mentioned the 3 assistant principals that the middle schools were looking at. And I understand that we're not doing that at this time. But if we are going to look at in the future, adding 1 assistant per grade level, when that campus is only going to house less than 800 students, am I correct, Sandra?
750.
Okay.
Yes.
Then we are also needing to look at our 9th grade campus, who houses the same amount of students, and they only have 1 principal, 1 assistant, and 1 counselor. How many counselors do they have and how many assistants?
Where's Rocio? I want to make sure she validates what I'm
There
saying.
are 2, I believe.
Yes,
1 AP, okay.
3 counselors.
Okay, so the counselors, you have 3 counselors, but 1 AP.
Sure.
Okay, so then we would have to look at that as well, because you have the same amount of students at the 9th grade or more than what the elementary campuses are going to be having. The other thing that, before you address that part, when I was looking at the CTE classes, and I think it's great that we're trying to offer the CTE classes for all of the middle school, are we going to be looking at adding another coordinator or coordinator per? Or is the CTE coordinator at the high school going to be responsible for also overseeing the the middle school CTE program?
So, thank you for the questions, Ms. Webb. First, in terms of the administrators at the middle school and, the student to administrator ratio, we recognize that the middle school is a special age level that needs a whole lot of guidance and a whole lot of structure, more so than any grade level. By the time that students get to the freshman campus, they have had some kind of success. They're a lot more mature. Not saying that middle schoolers are immature, they're just acting their age. All of the students that failed at the middle school, they don't go to the freshman, they go to blended. So freshman has more of a cleaner cohort moving forward in terms of students that had already had some level of achievement. But the middle school is a vulnerable age, and if we look at leadership models throughout the state, that's what they like to have, 1 counselor, 1 administrator. Not to say that we're going to do it, it's just keeping in line with that model. But budgets being what they are, and being first committed to the fine arts teachers, it might be a difficult feat achieving that unless the state provides some good funding, which nobody's counting on right now. And as far as the CT, yes, ma'am, the CT coordinator and his or her assistant, whoever it may be next year. I'm not speaking for Roger, but anyway, they would be in charge of the middle school programs. We would not have a middle school CT coordinator. Cindy will share them with us. Where is she? Yes.
Anyone else? I just want to, I guess, interject. There's already legislation that is going to be introduced for this legislative session in regard to certain curriculum, everything from teaching Bible lessons and so forth. So keep in mind legislation that is coming up and the uncertainty of money as well. But I just want to reassure that when you were talking about amenities, I think Ms. Rofeld has already mentioned, for example, tennis courts, and I'm thinking, football and athletic programs that are done after school and so forth. We really don't have the same opportunities as in regard to. So I know you mentioned busing students to Del Rio Middle School, but they will be competing against each other, and I'm trying to figure out how that will be done in regard to, let's say, football, volleyball, which they have a gym, but let's say football.
So, Mr. Mesa, the athletics box wasn't checked off in what Sandra said because we haven't made some decisions about that. But we have been working with Coach McCray. As a matter of fact, Coach McCray has been part of the site visits to the campuses. And there are some very good, affordable recommendations on how to keep the sports equal. For example, Garfield will have 2 gyms. San Felipe Memorial would only have 1 gym for now. Garfield would have 2. We did get some quotes on placing turf on the practice fields, both at Garfield and at San Felipe Memorial. So there's a whole lot of discussion. The only thing that would require busing would be for tennis. And of course, the competition, those would be handled at the stadium behind the middle school. But there would be solid practice facilities at each of the middle school campuses. And probably by January, we'll be able to make a report on athletics.
Okay. Mr. Galindo?
Dr. Rosen, talking with the rezoning, and you would be moving some of the students to other area schools. Can you explain a little bit transportation-wise? Be able to cover it? How would that work? Busing of the students and so forth like that. Would we be able to cover that fully? And how kind of would that work, knowing that you're going to rezone most of this area to different areas and going to have to bus them back to this area? So how would that work?
We're looking at different plans. I know that Mr. Cabello has been working on it, and he did mention even the availability of additional buses because of having to move the Garfield students to all different attendance zones. And he is very confident that it would happen. Now, we are exploring other options that are being used in other districts that would make it easier, but that's providing transportation even to students that don't usually use transportation. For example, finding a common area in the center of town. I haven't talked to any business owner, but let's just say Bell Furniture, because they have a huge parking lot. So if a parent coming from the north side of town wanted to drop their students off there directly into the bus at Bell Furniture, then there would be one bus that would run directly to the middle school. And then the parent wouldn't have to fight the traffic at any one of the neighborhood schools. But we're able to do that because in the plan that Mr. Cabello has come up with, there would be 3 buses available. Then we also discussed in the evenings, when students get out of their elementary school for Garfield and they're being bused back, funding our own ACE program in their neighborhood. So being in contact with one of the community centers here in the Chihuahua area so that then parents don't have to worry about their kids being bused all the way back. Now, that would be funded out of district funds because the ACE grant is very specific as to the site and the location, and we'd be adding another site. We talked about offering transportation even after the first bus runs for any student who might miss the bus to help parents with that transportation. Again, we're able to do that because of the number of buses that we would need at the time.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Anyone else? Okay, thank you, Sandra.
Thank you, sir.
Next report we have is the RDA Results-Driven Accountability Report. Jane Villarreal.
Good evening, Board President Mesa, Dr. Rios, members of the board. Tonight, I'll be presenting an overview of the 2024 Results-Driven Accountability Report that was released by the state. This is part of the accountability manual, and this is used by TEA as an annual evaluation of our performance and program effectiveness. Should have received a report, the 2024 RDA report. There you'll notice that cover page, the framework consists of three program areas consisting of bilingual education, English as a second language, and emergent bilingual. That program, also other special populations, as well as special education. Each of those program areas have indicators, and they're grouped into 3 domains. You'll see that each have Domain 1, academic achievement, Domain 2, post-secondary readiness, and Domain 3, disproportionate analysis. So each of those areas will have performance levels that we will review tonight, ranging from 0 to 4. There will be performance levels of not assigned, required improvement, special analysis, and report only. Some of the things that you'll notice in those indicators are, of course, those numbers. The higher the performance level is, the lower our performance was here at our district. Some of those RDA indicators are reported as information only, and it allows for the LEA to plan ahead. For instance, we'll go over that in page 1. And of course, we'll see those different performance levels throughout the report.
Jane,
At the end
I'm
of
sorry,
the
Jane,
report,
I just want to clarify for our new board members.
Yes,
The higher the number, the higher the intervention. So we want low numbers. We want a 0
Right.
on the performance levels, and we want a 1 on the determination levels.
right.
Okay, just
So the higher the number, the lower our performance. And then at the end of the report, thank you, Dr. Rios, for clarifying that. At the end of the report, we'll go over our determination levels. A 1 meets requirements. A 2 needs assistance. A 3 is needs intervention. And a 4, it indicates that we need substantial intervention. In our report, in page 1, we'll start off with bilingual ESL EB domain 1. I'm going to only highlight, for the most part, our performance levels stayed the same. The only areas I will be discussing or reviewing are the changes that happened between 23 and 24. So the first page, you'll see that those first four areas or indicators went from a report only for the past 2 years to an actual assignment of a performance level. What the RDA report shows is the 23 assignment, and then of course the 24. And you'll see that those indicators, indicator 1, bilingual education star performance, grades 3 through 8, the passing rate. For math, RLA, science, and social studies, last year was a report only. In 24, you'll see what our performance level is for this year. Indicator 2 is our ESL grades, the passing rate for our ESL star grades 3 through 8. Again, for math, RLA, science, and social studies. 2023, those were all report only. And then you'll see in 2024, we have an assignment of a performance level. 3 is the alternate language program for STAR, the passing rate, again, for grades 3 through 8. Last year was report only. This year, you'll see our assignment of performance level. And then indicator 4 is our EBs that are not served, which are our denials. Their passing rate, grades 3 through 8, for each of the subject areas. Last year, again, they were report only. This year, you'll see our assignments. And so they did give us a report only for 2 years, and that is for the purpose of planning in preparation for when they do give us those performance levels, and this year they did. The next page, you'll see domain, we continue with domain 1 for the bilingual program, and indicator 6 for social studies. These are our students that met the minimum level of satisfactory performance. These were students that were, there are monitors this year, so they were formally in the bilingual program. And you'll see that we had an improvement there in social studies. We went from a 3 last year to a performance level of 0. In 7, we had a slight regression. That is our EBs. 7 measures are the percentage of our EBs that are students that are taking the STAR EOC assessment, and they met satisfactory performance or higher. Domain 2, on page 4, again, all the proficient or performance levels are the same, except for 11, you'll see a change. That was an improvement, and we met the required improvement on indicator 11, our EB annual dropout rate from grades 7 through 12. Next, we move on to OSP, domains 1 and 2. Again, I'm only highlighting those changes that occurred from 23 to 24. Page 6, you'll notice domain 1, indicator 1, our OSP star 3 through 8 passing rate in social studies. We did have a regression there in our performance level from 23 to 24, from a 0 to a 3. Domain 2, page 8, you'll see indicator 5. That's our annual dropout rate for grades 7 through 12. And those are our students in foster care experiencing homelessness or military connected. Again, the dropout rate showed an improvement, and we were able to meet required improvement. We went from a 1 to a 0. Next area is special education, our next program, and we are looking at page 10 and 11 in your report, your copy of the report. Indicator 3 is our students that have exited the special education program. As you can see, we remained in science as a 0. Now, you'll notice that SA is special analysis. That's when we don't have a minimum group requirement or size requirement. So again, social studies, we went from no assignment to an actual assignment of 0, so we're doing well there. Indicator 4 is our special ed STAR EOC passing rates. We had slight regressions there. And then domain 3 on page 15, that's our disciplinary removals rate. In special education, we had a slight regression as well. In 2023, we had a 2, went to a 3. Last page, you'll see the summary, the comparison of the summaries, the total amounts of 0s, 1s, 2s, 3s, 4s, and so on. And it shows the totals. The last part that you'll see there is the determination levels. So last year, 2023, for the bilingual program, we were at a needs intervention. This year we remained at a 3, determination level of a 3, so we remain in needs intervention. For OSP, we went from a 1 last year to a 2 this year, so needs assistance is the determination level for 2024. And then special education remained at a 1, and they met requirements. So next steps for us is, of course, to work with our district coordinator and our district leadership team to formulate, of course, plans for continuous improvement. Our bilingual will need to submit a strategic support plan by December the 20th. And then, of course, we have our meeting with TEA on January the 24th next year to review the monitoring activities and, of course, the support plan. They do encourage us to complete a root cause analysis to identify and prioritize goals for our plan. And that is all I have. Any questions?
Board members? I know there's some questions. Mr. Orfeld.
Why do you think such a disparity in social studies, 3 to 8, 3 to 5, that are going from a 0 to a 3?
It's based on the passing rate.
Uh-huh.
That's the area.
I mean, are we not, if we were to take the regular data from the regular ed kids and compare it, there would there be a mirror image there as well? So yes.
For
So-
8th grade social studies, yes.
So are we not teaching history, social studies in 3 and 5 because we're too busy worried about getting them to pass math, science, and reading? Because science was okay, but we focus so much time on math and reading.
That is, social studies is an area of focus in our plan.
If I may,
Dr.
Mr.
Rios?
President, there is an issue with social studies instruction, but it particularly has to do with the actual grade level. If we compare ourselves historically over the years, how we measure up against the rest of the state, there has been an issue. Now, specifically on the 3 through 8 passing rate for social studies with the eco-disc group, the data analysis that we'll conduct will specifically indicate, was it a teacher that moved out that was really strong in social studies and isn't there this year? That could possibly have something to do with it. I don't know if that's the case. The passing rate in reading for 8th grade students was higher this year, so it doesn't make sense that and by this year, I mean this passing year, so it doesn't make sense that the social studies grade passing rate would go down. But I think that once we do the analysis of data and we isolate it to the groups of students and by teacher, we'll be able to have a stronger answer for that, or a clear answer for that. And we'll definitely share that plan with the board.
Jane, I'm always concerned with the bilingual again. I know we're trying to do everything we can, but it's hard to recruit, for example, teachers for summer school if needed, for extended day and extended year. You want to get the best qualified teachers, and so, but it continues to be low. It continues to be low. They do so well in Head Start, for example, and then first grade, and then they enter to the testing 3rd grade through 8th, and it's, it gets, I don't know, we do have some qualified teachers, and I know it's difficult to recruit other teachers that as they leave, I'm talking about experienced teachers that know what to do and how to improve scores. But I'm concerned with the 3. Dr. Rios?
If we look at the passing rate for the bilingual students in grades 3 through 8, we're going to find that at elementary, they do well or they show improvement, and we can tell by the number of kids that exited the bilingual program and the grades that they exited at. I don't think Karen's here today, is she?
She is not.
Okay. So if we look at the number of kids that were able to exit the bilingual program, which part of it is how they do in the STAR assessment, it looks very strong. The data analysis will show that the higher failure rates for bilingual students are at the middle school. And the smaller number of exits for the number of years that the students have been in the program is at the middle school. We hope that some of the interventions that they have in place this year at both San Felipe Memorial and Del Rio Middle School will show some difference. But the bigger gains will be seen next year as the groups are smaller and the number of interventions for the kids are distributed amongst 3 campuses and much smaller numbers. So I think that we'll begin to see a positive swing, even though we will not be able to recruit that many more bilingual teachers.
I find it difficult because, I was a middle school principal, and so before we had 6th grade separate and so forth, and it should be exited by 6th grade. I don't want for them to reach 7th and 8th grade still wanting to speak Spanish, and if they started early. I remember, being a bilingual teacher, and I would expect for them to say, hey, speak Spanish, and then I would say, hey, you've been in bilingual 6 years already, and it's time for you to practice your English and so forth. But I know it's hard to recruit teachers, but if there's a big turnover in bilingual teachers, I know we're offering a stipend and everything else. We've got to do something to bring qualified bilingual teachers and that really will improve the scores before they get to eighth grade. I mean, that's my hope.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
We did have a record number of students that exited this last year, and this year we had the opportunity to exit a whole lot more students than even last year. So we have work to do, clearly, but we're hopeful that we're starting to see some progress. Unfortunately, the number of students that we exit from the bilingual program doesn't necessarily reflect one way or the other, positively or negatively, on this report. That concludes our presentation for RDA. This coming month in January, this is more like the federal accountability side. This next month in January, we'll show the state report card. That was released, I think,
December 12th. December 12th was released.
last Thursday. So we'll show that in January. We'll see a lot of favorability, particularly as we compare to the region and the state.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
We'll continue our efforts in getting teachers to get certified. We do have 3 programs right now that we're providing for anyone that is wanting to get certified. We'll continue those efforts.
I'm just hoping that at some point, at some year, being that we're a border town, that we can recruit teachers from Mexico to teach bilingual education and do a great job of doing that, because there are schools in Mexico that excel in both in English and Spanish, and some of our students actually have they go from here to Acuña to study because, again, they have skills in math and other areas, but some of these teachers are capable of doing a good job. If we're facing, and I know it's a difficult thing to recruit teachers, but for the bilingual program, because it's hard when you have so many different levels, but something has to improve, Dr. Rios.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Next report we have is item 8D, Facilities and Construction Update. Hector Chapa.
Good evening, President Mesa, Dr. Rios, members of the board. Tonight's update will provide information regarding the construction projects as well as maintenance projects, which include construction projects includes the fence project for San Felipe Memorial Middle School, the Cody Wardlaw Gymnasium renovation, proposed HVAC equipment replacement project, which for that portion of the presentation, members from Schneider will take over. The first slide you see is the proposed fencing for San Felipe Memorial Middle School. You'll notice the red lines represent decorative fencing, and the blue lines represent proposed chain link fencing. The reason for the chain link fencing is future building that's proposed to be constructed adjacent to the gymnasium once that property adjacent to the gymnasium is secured. Cody Wardlaw, a roofing contractor, will begin their portion Thursday of this week. Plumbing, Texas Chillers is currently under construction at the site. HVAC barely have started. Electrical has already begun demolition. We have 2 items later on in the agenda. One for a fire sprinkler system, which the plans have been under review with the City of Del Rio for a permit. We're confident that the sprinkler system will not be required. However, just to expedite, if the need arises, we're bringing it to the board for approval for the bid, and as well as the windows and doors through central glass and mirror. as of today, our staff has finished doing all the preliminary framing for the restrooms and demolition that was required. And as previously stated, the plumbers are currently working there. They run the sewer lines under the crawl space, and they're working on venting lines as well as the water lines above the ceiling. As I mentioned about HVAC equipment, and this is just an update of current equipment that's under repair. At Buena Vista School, we have one unit of the cafeteria that's under being repaired. At San Felipe Memorial Middle School, we have 3 classrooms, A112, 132, and A133 that are under repair. My understanding, it's just some faulty wiring that needs to be replaced on those 3 units. Lamar, 1 unit over the gymnasium, it's under repair. Calderon Elementary, room 120, that needs a heat pump. That particular classroom was storage previously, so it was converted to a classroom. So under the previous scenario, it only had cooling. So we're in the process of replacing the equipment to accommodate heating as well. And at the high school, we have 3 different classrooms, 230C, 243C, and room 1107 that are under repair. Those are not part of the chiller systems. And also, in the new gym, the dressing rooms are under repair, as well as there, and it's minor stuff. Again, some faulty wiring that needs to be replaced. The last location is Cardwell, the library, the reading room, it's under repair. This portion of the presentation, Snyder will be taking over.
Questions? Ms. Orfeld?
Just real quick, on room 120, you said needed the heat pump. That was pending a quote.
Correct.
Is the hope to have that quote in and the work done before the kiddos come back in January? Before
Yeah.
the real cold sets in?
Yes, sir. So all these repairs are being done by Amistad Heating and Air, our contractor. So we're pushing them to get us the quote as soon as possible so we can proceed with that.
Good deal.
Yes, Dr. Rios?
The one thing that maybe we should have added here, just to reassure the board, is the number of equipment that our contractor, Amistad, is fixing on a daily basis. So for example, when we reviewed this list at the last operations meeting on Thursday, the list was significantly higher, but since Thursday to today, they completed some repairs. And so they'll continue to do, to mark things off the list. And the items on here are just items that they can do, and they've been really responsive with the contract that we have with them. So I'm very confident that probably all of these will be done before the students return.
There's a cold spell that will be coming in before they go off and,
Yeah.
okay, Mr. Galindo has a question.
And just to elaborate on that, Mr. Chapa, when they're working on these rooms, is it like these rooms are not operable? Is it hot in there, or is it just, they're able to work on it while business is going as usual? Can you just elaborate on that as well?
No, sir. A lot of them are working, but not to the degree they're supposed to. So, for instance, let's say we have a temperature of 35 degrees, the equipment works fine. But if the ambient temperature goes below 32 degrees, that's when the equipment struggles to maintain the set point temperature of 68 degrees. So it might decline, be lower than what we're used to, but they're still working.
Okay. That's where my concern was. Thank you.
Anyone else? Yes, Mr. Almaguer?
As far as the decorative fencing, what's the project timeline on that for the middle school?
Sir,
Sir, just today, we signed the contract for the fence, I'm sorry, for the property on Water Street. Now that we have that contract, the next thing to do is to work with the city to make sure that we can close off that street as an easement. But our hopes are to have a bid for the fence in January and have a contractor on board by February, and allow them to start working on it immediately so that it can be done by the end of the summer.
Okay. That was my next question, is the city and Water Street, if we've
Yeah,
already done that.
Yeah, I didn't want to approach the city until I was for sure that we had a contract on Water Street.
Okay.
And we know how much that we struggled with that, but now it's finally done. So
Okay, thank you.
we're confident.
Anyone else? Okay, we'll go on to the next phase.
Thank you, Hector. Mr. Mesa, Dr. Rios, members of the board, my name is Aaron Garcia. Thank you for having us today. I'm with Schneider Electric. Also with me is Garrett Sloman. He's on our project development team. And what we're going to be going over today is to give you an overview of some of the projects that we've been supporting the district with over the last several months. I know this page is not up here, but they got it up there. Hector, or is it- Okay. There it is. So over the last several months, sorry. Okay. What's
Hector, tell me, what does he see on his screen?
the second page? Are y'all on the second page there? or-
It's not on the screen.
Use the arrow on the keyboard and switch so I can see what it switched to.
Okay, perfect. So over the last several months, we've partnered with the district. We started with a capital asset planning report that we looked at to help the district in immediate needs and future needs for the district, specifically in the air conditioning, HVAC portion of all the campuses. Then we also supported the district in a grant that they applied for. We helped out the district on the technical side of the grant. And then this report is going to cover the business case study that we did, or the preliminary audit. We also call it a preliminary audit of your campuses. What our focus was for this particular understanding with the district was to help identify the mechanical needs, to help modernize school buildings, and to provide to help prepare the district for a better, safe environment for the learning environment throughout the district. Also to help maximize the utility savings through grants and also to help demonstrate a wise stewardship through that the district is looking towards efficiency through the project, and then also to help identify and reduce deferred maintenance, and then also to address capital improvements and the upcoming bond for next year. This next page is a matrix of all the campuses. You can see all the different campuses up on the top that we did site visits for. And then on the left side, you'll see the different scope of work that's identified for each of those campuses, from mechanical, which is air conditioning needs, to building automation, which is the controls that control the air conditioning. And then electrical and building envelope type needs. Building envelope meaning the roofing or areas that you could have leakage through doors or windows, things like that. In the matrix, if you see all the green boxes that are in that matrix, those identified green boxes underneath each of those campuses is the immediate need or the long-term needs for that campus. So as you can see, there's quite a bit of mechanical needs throughout almost all your campuses. The next few pages will kind of narrow down into to some of the specific schools, and I'm going to let Garrett come up and talk about those.
All right, thanks, Aaron. Hi, everybody. So yeah, we're going to talk about some specifics. Aaron already showed the matrix on the previous screen, but this goes into some additional detail, showing some photos that we're taking during the site visits. This is specifically on this page, some of the HVAC and mechanical equipment at some of the campuses, the San Felipe Memorial Middle School, the Del Rio Middle School Freshman Center, Buena Vista, and Lamar. And some of the equipment specifically that is either past useful life, also things that have just poor design currently that needs to be addressed and is causing comfort issues in the spaces, inadequate ventilation, things like that. And so you'll notice a lot of this is DX equipment, that's direct expansion, so it's like split systems. You'll also notice a picture down in the bottom middle there of some chillers that were identified as a specific area of improvement that's a priority for the district. They're working right now, but they are 23 years old and well past useful life and continue to necessitate repairs over time. If we go to the next page, these are some of the still important needs, but maybe not as critical immediately, and may look further. We're going to talk about priorities on a future page here, but things like windows that are single pane currently, sealing around the windows and doors. Aaron mentioned the BAS, that's the building automation system that controls the HVAC equipment, specifically at the special ed offices and the freshmen in San Felipe Memorial Middle School. Those are needing to be looked at from a redesign or replacement perspective as well. And then on this page, seeing some pictures of some very old electrical equipment that's past useful life as well. So needing to upgrade those for safety reasons and make sure that efficiency is up to date there. If we go to the last page here, before I hand it back over to Aaron, in working through the capital asset planning exercise in that survey, as well as conversations with administration and district employees, there was a prioritization exercise that took place around what's most critical. So if you saw that matrix on the first page, that was everything that was identified through the site surveys, through the capital asset planning exercise. So then conversation took place on how do we really prioritize this for work that needs to happen immediately versus things that could be deferred until the bond later next year. And so, so those items are the Del Rio Middle School chillers and pumps, the Lamar Elementary rooftop units, and the freshman campus replacement needs. And specifically at the freshman campus, there's some issues there around either going with a like-kind replacement or potentially a redesign, and that would be worked through in a design and development effort when we move to our next step in the process. So, Aaron, do you want to take back over for next steps?
Sure. The next slide is just a quick glance for some of the board members that maybe are not familiar with Schneider. We did a project several years back with the district, and this is just a snapshot of other projects that we've done throughout the state. And when you get time, you can go through this. If you have any questions, you can come back to that shortly. But currently, what the immediate needs that what Garrett was just talking about, that need to take place. In the next step, what we're recommending is that we go into the design phase. So I believe that the district might be bringing this back in January to move into the next step, which would be for us to come in and start the engineering design phase. And during that phase, we'll come back. It's usually about a 3 to 4 month period. We'll put together all the projects, whether we just focus on the chiller project alone, or we look at all 3 campuses and build out all 3 to do all at once. And during that phase, we'd be getting into a design agreement with the district. And then shortly after that, that's whenever we'd come back with the construction cost and total turnkey price for the projects to take place. And then at that point, which could be about 4 to 6 months from now, you'd be moving forward into the construction phase of it. And then the construction phase probably will take, on the different projects, there'll be different timeframes. So that a chiller project goes pretty quick, but the other projects that, depending if there has to be some redesign work, those could take a little longer. So at this point, I'll go ahead and open it up to any questions y'all might have.
Dr. Reyes?
Can you go back 2 slides? Mr. Mesa, members of the board, in August, we experienced some surprises that we had not planned for in terms of the AC, and we remember the discussion around it. At that time, the board and the superintendent talked about what we could do to prevent that from happening again, those costly surprises. So we looked at different entities to do an audit of all of our equipment to identify things that if they go out, it would be costly to replace, especially if we hadn't planned for it, and it would have great effect on all the classrooms. So Schneider Electric performed that audit for us, and we came up with immediate needs. So his team worked with Hector Chapa's team to identify what we needed to do now because it had the highest possibility of breaking down. Does that mean that it doesn't work right now? No, it doesn't mean that. It's working, maybe not at capacity, and definitely we're always hoping for the best. But that work, until it's designed, we won't know the exact price, but it would be about $2.8 to $3.2 million in work. That's why this past weekend, I shared with you funding opportunities for this equipment. But what I want to do between now, if anybody has any feedback, share it with me. I would like to bring a design contract so that Schneider could begin designing. So if we were to do just the chillers, we would pay them $65,000, but only if we don't go through the project. So if they design it, the $65,000 it's part of the overall expense. And if we design all 3, it would be $100,000 for their design fee. Again, we don't pay them immediately. It's worked into the project as long as we move forward with the project within 6 months after the design is done. But as always, I present it to y'all in a board update, and then we have a presentation like we're having today. And then that gives all of us 30 days for feedback and coaching that y'all may provide me on where we want to go. What I'd like to do next is just bring this proposal as well as other proposals to the Citizens Committee that you all put together. And as far as the 13 to 15 million project, that's something that should we have a bond election either next year or the year after that, we would incorporate that work into it. I don't know if there's any additional questions, Mr. Mesa.
Mr. Galindo.
And looking at this project, and looking at this audit that you did, and great job. Thank you very much, Mr. Garcia, for giving us this information. In a report that you get us within the month, Dr. Rios, and this is just if you can educate me on this, what is the number of chillers to regular HVACs, and is that the only necessary way to go is with chillers? The reason I ask is because the maintenance, trying to get somebody down here as compared to what you've been doing and the updates that you've given us with the AC here, you know, you get Amistad Heating and Air or whatever it is, they're here quickly able to repair. I know chillers, there's nobody in the area that repairs chillers. You got to wait for somebody out of town, and heaven forbid, one of our main chillers goes down, say at the high school, and they don't have AC, you know, that's my one concern. Now, if that's what we have to go with, I understand, but I want to know what the options are. Is that the only option? Because I know like Garfield, they have rooftop ACs. They got about 4 of them. But other areas, that's my only concern in dealing with another nature of learning about chillers. Like, we don't have any of that service here locally, so if it goes down, it's a rough few days before you get any of those parts. So I just wanted to know what the options were. That's the best option with explanation, great, but just to kind of get that idea.
Yeah, and that's a good question. So when we get into the design phase, we typically will look at a couple, maybe even 3 different options for the scope of work that needs to be done. We'll make recommendations with the district on the plus and minuses of each option. We had the same situation. You're concerned for one of the schools that I personally worked with, which was Port Isabel Independent School District. They had the same concern. They had some chillers. They were not able to keep up with it. We came up with 3 different options. They decided it was a remove and replace with the same type of system. We had a rooftop option, come back with rooftop units, which is easier maintenance, and their staff knew how to work on those type. And then there was a heat pump option. So to answer your question, we'll definitely look at other options. Other options could be more costly as well. So.
And that's why I was asking, and it's not to deviate from what we're already doing, but just if you're going to already start presenting the options, and then the cost is the same, but we can get a better service out of, you know, making sure that the school is always taken care of in the district buildings and everybody's taken care of. I guess that's where I'm kind of going with it, because just knowing to get somebody here for a chiller, no matter how good the company is, you're still going to have to relay the cost and time for them to get here. And so that's kind of just where I was wondering on that.
Absolutely. And that's what will happen in the next phase. Once we're under a design agreement phase, we'll look at those different options.
Thank you.
I've got, anybody else before? I've got a couple of questions. First one, Dr. Rios, didn't we do an electrical work update on freshman school
Yes, Mr. Mesa,
upgrade?
but there's different kinds of electrical upgrades that have happened at the freshman school. What we did, though, was very basic. It was just to provide enough support for the computer labs, the cows, to be supported. But in terms of the bigger unit, kind of like what's up there on the,
Yes, I know it's HV. It's
yeah, but that
HVAC.
electrical, yeah, the electrical pictures that you see up there, we didn't touch any of that. We just added more power to support
Okay.
the charging of the computer on wheels stations.
And then my other question is in regard to chillers. Are they the less expensive option compared to?
Yeah, so as far as replacing what's there already, probably upfront cost would be cheapest to go back with what's there currently. But to your point, that may not be the best fit long-term from a maintenance standpoint. And so that's definitely something we can look at in the design phase, if you're wanting to look at options. But yeah, as far as cheapest upfront cost, it would be the cheapest to go back with what's in place versus doing a redesign of that space.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much. Unless anyone else has a question. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, before we go on to the rest of Mr. Chapa's presentation, in January, between now and January, we would decide if we're going to bring a recommendation for just the middle school or for the design of the three pieces. So if there's any feedback and y'all need to visit with me or email me about it, please do so. Otherwise, we'll bring one of the two recommendations in January.
Okay.
Did Aaron break it for you, Mr. Chapa?
It sure looks that way. I'm gonna have to restart it. So the next slide here is the maintenance projects. Currently, at the SGLC facility, we have a small project to replace lights in the classrooms. So one classroom has been completed. 2 classrooms are scheduled to be, the lights be removed and replaced during the Christmas break. Also, we have a proposed project, interior refresh at Calderon Elementary, for a project estimated cost of a little bit over $109,000. And also, we have a current open RFP for an acoustical treatment for the Del Rio Middle School dining area. Of course, all these projects are pending Citizens Committee review and recommendation. Now we go into the work orders. For the maintenance department from September the 1st through the end of November, there were 1,085 work orders created, 89% were completed. In the 0 to 15 days, 81% were completed. On the 16 to 30 days, 80% were completed. 31 to 60 days, 89% were completed. And 61 to 90 days, 94% were completed. Technology, in the 90 days, 2,426 tickets were created, of which 95% were completed. The 0 to 15 days, 93% were completed. 16 to 30 days, 95% were completed. 31 to 60 days, 97% were completed. And the 61 to 90 days, 95% were completed. Transportation Department, 205 tickets were created during the past 90 days. 97% were completed. 0 to 15 days, 88% were completed. 16 to 30 days, 100% were completed. 31 to 60 days, 99% were completed. And 61 to 90 days, 98% were completed. This concludes the presentation.
Questions, board members? Mr. Chapa, I have several questions. On the, let's say with the Cody Wardlaw, I noticed that it's not well insulated. What is proposed for that under the renovation?
Yes, sir. Under the restrooms, those will be insulated as well as in the ceiling. Well, not the ceiling. The roof itself has part of the roofing overlay will have a 5-inch thick foam insulation right above the existing roof system and below the TPO roof.
Okay,
So that'll
great.
provide the insulation for the roof/ceiling. But in the bathrooms, that's going to be bad insulation within all the wall cavities.
Great, great. Dr. Rios?
Also, the windows and doors that'll be added will be of better quality than what's currently there.
Okay, great. Let's see, my other question had to do we have to do the middle school with the acoustical thing? We'll have less students there, Dr. Rios.
So the committee did a walkthrough there last week. Well, we did a walkthrough through all of them. And even with a handful of students, it's still very loud. So it's needed, but it's not it may not make the cut once the committee reviews all the AC needs that are required. Some of the other upgrades that will be needed for athletics at the different campuses. So it's just one of the many things that are being considered, but the committee will prioritize all of those needs.
Okay, because there was already one treatment done in regard to testing the sounds, and it didn't work.
Yeah.
So, just, I hope we don't, if someone can guarantee, I mean, it's difficult, but we're gonna have less students, so might have to take a second look at it. And that's all. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, next item we have is the consent agenda. Again, one action, will approve all items. There are a couple of meetings, special call meetings, regular meetings, some purchase orders. And again, as always, we're grateful for the donations that have been made by businesses and individuals. They will be posted on social media. We appreciate all the donations that are done, again, to help out different programs in our district. So thank you so much for doing that. I'll ask board members if there's any questions, any item that needs to be pulled for further explanation. Hearing none. Again, I will ask again, one action, will approve all items on the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve? Motion made by Mr. Orfeld, seconded by Mr. Almaraz. I'm sorry, Almaraz. I don't know why I said Almaraz. All those in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Sorry, Mr. Almaraz. We go on to administration, item 10. First item we have is A, consideration to approve an amendment to the District of Innovation, DOI, local plan regarding educator certification for career and technical education, CTE programs. Sandra Hernandez.
Mr. Mesa?
Yes.
This item was discussed at length during the middle school redesign. Can we move to see if there's any questions? If not, we can read the recommendation.
Sure. Any questions from board members? I think all of us know what that is for. Then the recommendation, please.
Yes, sir. It is the recommendation of the administration that the Board of Trustees approve the amendment to the District of Innovation local plan regarding educator certification for career and technical education programs, and to notify the commissioner upon approval of the board.
You've heard the recommendation from administration. The motion been made by Mr. Galindo, seconded by Ms. Webb. All those in favor? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Go on to business and finance, item 13. Discussion and possible action to enter a resolution approving the public sale pursuant to section 3405 of the Texas Property Tax Code of certain real properties previously struck off to the taxing authorities pursuant to section 3401C of the Texas Property Tax Code for delinquent and ad valorem tax assesses, and allow the public sale of the properties to the highest bidder. Amy Childress.
Good evening, President Mesa, Dr. Rios, and members of the board. We have again with us Ms. Sonia Gonzalez, who can, for this, there are 3 properties that have been identified that have been struck off that we would like you to consider resolutions to allow for public sale.
No, okay, okay. I believe it's in your packet, it's not on the screen. So basically, just a quick recap. Once we go to trial and enter a judgment against a property owner, if they're still unable to enter into a payment contract, ultimately, it'll end up at foreclosure. It'll be auctioned off. Now, at that point, if there are not any bidders on that property, it's struck off to the taxing entities who's basically holding it in trust at that point, okay? So this is where we're at here. Now, these particular properties, and I'll go one by one. There's one bid that we received for 304 West Bowie Street. This was struck off in 2018, so it's been off the roll since February 2018. Now, the original minimum bid on that was $6,040. We had a taxpayer tender a bid that's below that minimum bid. Therefore, we are required to come before the governing body for consideration. Just to note, these bids have been approved by the county thus far. Came to the school district, and then depending on what occurs here, we will go to the city, possibly, okay? But the bidder here tendered a bid amount of $2,000, okay? Again, the original minimum bid was $6,040. He's tendered a bid of $2,000. The other property in question is located at 305 East Ogden. This property was also struck off February 6, 2018. Been off the roll since then. We have a bid, the original bid amount was $35,566. We have received a bid of $8,000. This is one of the properties in which the entities agreed to reduce that minimum bid. So it went from $35,566 down to $20,000. We received a bid of $8,000. And the last property, there are two lots, adjoining lots located 605 West Gutierrez Street. The original minimum bid on that property was $34,828.44. We've received a bid of $10,000. And again, we are required by law to bring it before the board at this time because these amounts that they've tendered do fall below the original minimum bid amount. The goal, again, with these types of projects is to get these properties back on the road. Right now, they're just sitting there.
Questions from board members? Hearing none. Recommendation,
I'll read the recommendation.
okay.
Mr. President, members of the board, it is a recommendation of the administration that the Board of Trustees discuss and take possible action to enter into a resolution approving the public sale of certain real properties previously struck off the taxing authorities pursuant to Section 34.01C of the Texas Property Tax Code for delinquent and ad valorem taxes assessed to said properties.
Part the recommendation, is there a motion for approval? Motion made by Becky Chavez, seconded by Amy Haynes. Amy Haynes, all those in favor? Motion is approved. Over.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sonia. Thank you. Next item we have is item B, consideration to approve disposal of surplus portable buildings. Amy Childress.
Good evening, President Mesa, Dr. Rios, and members of the board. As part of an initiative to remove energy inefficient buildings and reduce property insurance liabilities, the district will vacate all portable buildings and attempt to sell, donate, or otherwise remove these from the district lands. At this time, the Val Verde County Sheriff's Department has approached us that they would like to take over 4 of those portable buildings that are behind the annexes. We do have Mr. Ortiz with us from the Sheriff's Department, who he did provide you kind of a timeline of what they expect for the project, and he can answer any other questions that you might have.
Okay. Question from board members? No questions.
All right.
So recommendation.
Yes, sir. It is the recommendation of the administration that the Board of Trustees approve the donation of the surplus portable buildings to the Val Verde County Sheriff's Office.
For the recommendation, motion made by Mr. Galindo. Is there a second? Mr. Almaraz. All those in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ortiz. Next item, Human Resources, item B, consideration to approve the 2024-2025 retention stipend for all district employees. Amy Childress.
Sorry, we
I
jumped over
skipped
item
one.
A.
Oh, item A. Oops. I'm sorry. Consideration to approve the updated 2024-2025 district compensation plans. Amy Childress.
Good evening. You do have an updated compensation plans in front of you. At this time, we are looking at three changes under the supplemental stipends area. The first one is we do have an item on the agenda for a one-time stipend to be paid in December, and if that is approved, that needs to be added to to this compensation package. The second is we're just updating the retention stipend that we paid in September. We're scratching out the verbiage fall semester and just notating that that was done in September. And then we're also adding the Del Rio Initiative teaching stipends. The first one is for the instructional aid pathway to teaching, and the second is for the student teacher sign-on stipend. So those are the
Shouldn't that come
changes that
after
we're
the
making.
retention stipend? Shouldn't that come under the next item?
Oh, the third one, though, does, where we transfer the funds. I'm sorry, just for clarity, we approve the pay plan,
Correct.
and then the compensation plan, then we
Yes.
approve the stipend.
Yes, sir.
And then we approve the transfer of the funds.
Yes, sir. I need to have it on the compensation.
But in that
package.
order,
Yes,
correct?
sir.
Okay.
Okay. Just one question in regard to the item that will be coming up. Are the retention stipend, is that for employees that have been here a year?
That's for employees that are finishing the semester in good standing and are going to be pledging to return in January, this coming month. So anybody hired this year, anybody currently on the payroll, sir, is the easiest way to put it, whether they've been working since September 2024 or any time before that.
So what happens if they leave?
Anybody who leaves before January, so anybody who's resigned at December would not qualify for it.
No, I'm saying after January.
There's nothing we can do about that, if they leave in January, after January.
Okay. I'm not understanding this because the retention stipend will be paid out December,
Yes, sir.
and if they leave February,
It's, we don't have any legal recourse to collect if they leave in February.
okay, because normally a retention stipend goes like back a year if they've been with us. I'm just asking for information purposes. Because I don't think it's, I mean, retention is retention. We want you to stay. And so if we give a retention stipend and they leave in February, they don't complete the year. We're left with a vacancy. So I was hoping that it would be the year prior. In other words, they've been here a year. That's, again, I don't want to convince anybody else. I'm just talking, again, this is my personal feeling about retention. I don't know. Anybody else? If not, we're fine. We're fine?
No, I understand what you're saying.
Okay. Okay. All right, then. We're on item 8, consideration to approve the updated 2024-2025 district compensation plans.
It's already been, so moved.
So,
Can I do the recommendation? Wait, recommendation?
yes.
It is the recommendation of the administration that the Board of Trustees approve the updated 2024-2025 district compensation plan as presented.
Okay. Mr. Orfeld made a motion. Is there a second? Okay, Mr. Almaguer. All those in favor? The motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Item B, consideration to approve 2024-2025 retention stipend for all district employees. Amy Childress.
Good evening once again. At this time, we would like to recommend a December retention stipend, a one-time stipend to be paid to all employees in the amount of $1,250.
That's awesome. But I still, I still want to make sure that we have, teachers understand that, we're doing this again as not as a Christmas gift, but as a, we want for them to be teaching for us in our district, San Felipe Del Rossi ISD, and hope that they can stay the whole year. Okay? That's my understanding. I mean, I had to say that, but everybody understands. Okay. I think Ms. Chavez made a motion. Oh, you want to read the recommendation, please?
It is the recommendation of the administration that the Board of Trustees approve the 2024-2025 December retention stipend for district employees.
Okay. Ms. Chavez has made a motion for its recommendation. There's a motion seconded by Mrs. Amy Haynes. All those in favor? Motion carries unanimously. And again, we're so grateful for administration to be able to do this. We were not able to give, again, a pay increase that we wanted so much. And yes, we had a lot of discussion during the budget, and so staff was inconvenienced in regard to, our teachers and so forth. So I hope that, this will make up some of the stress that everybody has gone through and allow at least some Christmas shopping to go on.
Will it pay out on the 31st?
No, sir. I'll send an email to the staff here before I go home tonight. But Amy will process it tomorrow, and then if all works as it normally does when we run payroll, the teachers would see it in their bank accounts, maybe as early as Wednesday, no later than this Thursday.
Okay, awesome.
That's awesome.
There's still time for Christmas.
Thank you.
Okay, item C, consideration to approve modification of 2024-2025 general fund balance commitments. Amy Childress.
Good evening. Our 2023-2024 financial audit has been completed, and based on the finalized fund balance and the adopted budget, we do have an estimated excess fund balance of about $7.9 million. So due to the approval of the item previous for the stipend, I am asking to commit $1,881,900 to our committed funds in order to pay out the stipend.
Question from board members? No questions. Recommendation, please.
It is the recommendation of the administration that the Board of Trustees approve the modification of the 2024-2025 general fund balance commitment as discussed.
For the recommendation, is there a motion for approval? Did Mr. Galindo make a motion? Mr. Galindo and Mr. Almaguer seconded. All those in favor? Mr. Almaraz. I've never.
You're gonna have to change his name.
No, I don't know why I'm saying that. I mean, I see when he came in, I got it right. Now I'm not getting it right. Mr. Almaraz. Motion has been made in a second. All those in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Can we get another applause? We never get that, okay? So, thank you so much. Item D, consideration to approve the conversion of the vacant secretary counselor position to an instructional aide position for the Del Rio Freshman School. Amy Childress.
Good evening, President Mesa, Dr. Rios, and members of the board. Administration at this time would like to request the approval of one position for an instructional aide, ESL, due to increased student counts at the Del Rio Freshman School. We do have a secretary counselor vacancy position that due to budget changes that we did for 2024, we would like to convert to that instructional aide position.
Any questions from board members? Hearing none. Recommendation, please.
Sure. It is the recommendation of the administration that the Board of Trustees approve the conversion of vacant secretary counselor position to instructional aide ESL position for Del Rio Freshman School.
For the recommendation, I'll entertain a motion. Motion made by Mrs. Webb, seconded by Mrs. Haynes. All those in favor? Motion is approved.
Thank you.
Item E, discussion possible action to approve employee job descriptions and evaluation forms. Amy Childress.
Good evening once again. Before you, we have several special ed job evaluations and descriptions that needed to be updated. All of these changes are due to the SHARS Update that the job descriptions are now anyone that services Medicaid eligible students for the purposes of SHARS billing must have the personal care services verbiage on the job description. I will be tabling the licensed physical therapist assistant and the critical needs assistant. We weren't able to complete those, so we'll be bringing them to the January board meeting.
Question from board members? Recommendation, please.
It is the recommendation of the administration that the Board of Trustees approve the employee job descriptions and evaluation forms as discussed.
Heard the recommendation. Entertain a motion. Motion made by Mrs. Webb, seconded by Mr. Almaraz. All those in favor? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Sorry, Mr. Almaraz. Okay, the time is 8:10 p.m. We're going to close session pursuant to 551.074 and 551.071. Again, this is closed session. If any item needs to be taken, it will be taken upon reconvene to open session. We're also going into consultation with attorney under the Texas Government Code 551.071. Again, for information purposes, and we'll reconvene after closed session. We're now in closed session. Okay, the time is 9:30 p.m. We're going to reconvene to open session. No action was taken in executive. We're down to item 18A. Consideration to approve personnel report to include the following: new hires, district vacancies, retirements, resignations. Amy Childress.
Good evening, President Mesa, Dr. Rios, members of the board. It is the recommendation of administration that the Board of Trustees approve the retirements, resignations, and vacancies as discussed in closed session, and the following new personnel: Caitlin Mireles, pre-kindergarten teacher at Irene Cardwell Head Start School; Abriana Petty, first grade teacher at Ruben Chavita Elementary School; Angela Alonso, second grade teacher at Ruben Chavita Elementary School; and Valeria Vasquez, dual credit education teacher at Early College High School.
For the recommendation, I'll entertain a motion for approval. Mr. Almaraz, seconded by Mr. Overfelt. All those in favor? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
There being no other items on the agenda, we're now to adjournment. Is there a motion for adjournment? Mrs. Webb, Mr. Galindo, seconded. All those in favor? We are adjourned. Thank you and good night, everyone.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.